It's the 10th day of December, the day where we wrap up the 16 days activism against gender-based violence, which started on the 25th of November. Also, it's International Human Rights Day, which will form the bulk of our conversations this morning on Breakfast Central. Thank you for joining us on the show. My name is Olive Emodi, and you're welcome to Breakfast Central.
Like Oliver said, you're welcome to Breakfast Central. It's our duty to bring to you the latest stories. It's your early riser, and we're here to rise with you as you wake up and set out for another busy day. But guess what? The stories are indeed making the rounds, and you can bet that there is one that would always come forth. It's got to do with the story of the big one that took place in Ekiti State. There are indeed new developments concerning the story. 50 million naira bill has been granted, and not just that, there is a long list of surety that he needs to bring forth, especially to the court, in order for him to actually gain his freedom. But we'll talk about that in the course of today's show. But let's not forget that there is equally a picture that's trending. Now, this picture has gotten a lot of persons speaking deeply about the current situation we find ourselves here in Nigeria. I can't wait to share that picture with you right there on the screen. Everyone is talking about it, and everyone is wondering, why is it this way in a country that has been known to be very, very democratically aligned? And most importantly, every leader would come forth to say, our goal is to fight corruption. Is corruption actually being nipped in the bud? Well, I'm talking about a picture that showed a former governor and, of course, the current human rights lawyer who is being held in Ekiti State and is being detained. Now, if you haven't seen that picture anywhere else, you might start thinking, what does this portend or mean for the future? Well, Olive, I'm sure that picture is one that that speaks volume.
Right, indeed, and the picture has generated a lot of reactions. So this is a picture of Dele Faratimi, whose case was being heard in court yesterday. Now, his bail application was meant to be heard today, the 10th of December, but interestingly, in a surprising twist of events, it was heard yesterday, the 9th of December. One wonders why this happened earlier. Is it because there was a potential of strike actions happening today in Ekiti State, in Lagos, in Abuja, in London, and in Canada? Or is it because of the alleged involvement of certain bigwigs in Nigeria's political space? Reports have it that a delegation was sent to visit Afe Babalola to plead on behalf of Dele Faratimi. But we'll come back to that. So if you take a look at the picture on the screen, on the left is a governor who is alleged to have stolen billions of naira from the state commonwealth, pillaged the commonwealth of Nigerians in Kogi State, who's walking freely, you know. And on the right is someone who's committed or allegedly committed libel, being held in handcuffs. And this comparison has been made time and time again. Even the conditions for bail. You look at Dele Faratimi's condition for bail. He's been granted bail to the tune of 50 million naira and a surety with landed property. And then you remember the honorable who assaulted a Nigerian citizen because he's a taxi driver and he felt he could lord influence over him. He was given bail to the tune of 500,000 naira. So the question is, what really, and you know, the questions we hear a number of Nigerians asking and people saying is, what really is justice if justice is selective? Why is somebody who is, I mean, Dele Faratimi has been made to become a hero of the people right now for daring to speak out. But like we said, if Afe Babalola, you know, and all these other people whose names were mentioned in the books believe so strongly that they have a case against Dele Faratimi, the court is where this will be decided. But the question is, has libel come to the position, or has libel become that criminal offense that requires you bringing people in handcuffs? You know, I think that's the bulk of the criticism. But just to piggyback, you know, or to rewind to something I'd mentioned earlier, the reports have it that a delegation was made to visit Afe Babalola to plead on behalf of Dele Faratimi. There are different camps. There are those who think that Peter Obi, in his wisdom, has gone to involve diplomacy, understanding that everything cannot be settled with quarrel and argument and fight. So instead, let's apply some measure of diplomacy. But there are those who have criticized the involvement of His Excellency Peter Obi, one of which is Omoyele Sowore, who has said that his involvement in this matter has stripped Nigerians of the fight for justice, saying that you can't go to plead for somebody if the person has said what they believe to be the truth. And Dele Farotimi has said it on several platforms, that the one thing he's certain of is that everybody, in fact, he said he prays and prayed that everybody whose names he mentioned in that book, that they were alive and they had an opportunity to defend themselves. So it doesn't become a scenario of, why didn't you write this when they were alive so that they could defend themselves? And the one thing that is a defense to defamation, or in this case, libel, is truth. So if he can prove that this is the truth, then, you know, he has nothing to fear. He said time and time again how he's confident in the truth, not just as a sword, but also not just as a shield, but also as a sword. So
I think that's why the current case has tilted towards him being asked to come and prove the case. He needs to prove his statements that he wrote in that book. That's where it's going to right now. Well, just in case you do not know, he's been granted 50 million naira bond, bail, I beg your pardon. He needs to bring a surety who equally has 50 million naira bond. He also needs to have at least the following, a resident in Ekiti State. He also needs to have 3 years tax clearance with built-up property within Ekiti. The surety is a deposit, title deed with register of the court, sureties 4 recent passports and 4 pictures while standing, also applicable to the defendant. Defendant to equally deposit his international passport with the registrar of the courts. That means Dele Farotimi would not be traveling anytime soon. He would be held here in the country, but let's wait and see if that person would indeed emerge, because he has between now before the court goes on break.
I don't think that, to be honest, I don't think that meeting the bail conditions would be a problem. However, I think, just to reiterate again, that the cause of concern here isn't the fact that Dele Farotimi was arrested. It is the manner in which he was arrested.
That's one.
Wherever there is a wrong, there should be a remedy. So if anybody feels that they have a right to be wrong, they definitely have right to seek remedy in the court of competent jurisdiction.
Absolutely.
But it is the manner in which Dele Farotimi was arrested, and also the manner in which this case has been handled. So far, it's garnered reactions globally. His book has garnered influence that he probably didn't perceive or foresee. But also, again, just to say that it reminds us, him appearing in handcuffs, again sparks up the conversation about selective justice. If we go back to, I know EFCC, sorry that this doesn't really concern you directly, but if we go back to, for example, the EFCC and how they treat people who have been alleged to have committed a crime, the presumption of innocence does not apply when it's a common young man who has dreads or who has a stereotype that fits into their portfolio or their profiling for criminals. They arrest these men, throw them behind bars, sometimes take their mug shots. They treat them like common criminals. There have been cases of people who have been traumatized. Hardworking, I mean, I remember someone sharing his scenario one time on, his experience on social media. Hardworking Nigerians who have been unlawfully arrested and treated like common criminals. But when it comes to situations of influential people, politicians, and people who are at the helm of affairs, who hold power, it's a totally different kettle of fish. And that's not what we want in Nigeria.
What we're seeing now, I mean, I did read from a well-learned colleague as well in the industry. When we talk about, apart from the media, is also a journalist and also a lawyer, and he did say something. He said, what we are starting now, we're going to see it at the front in the future, because we're starting to setting a precedent where there is indeed selective justice. Certain people are, some animals are more equal than the others, the animal farm story. And he broke it down and said, listen, this doesn't work. But Peter Obi has actually been, chastised. He's been called different names for having visited Chief Afe Babalola for actually going to, seek justice, seek peace, and ensure that things are done properly. The pictures were on social media here and there, and everyone was talking about it on social media that while some were hailing him, like Oliver's rightly said, some were indeed criticizing him for doing so. But then again, we'd like to know your thoughts, so share with us, tweet us. You can find our Twitter, social media handles there on the screen. Let us know what you think. We're live on X, that's formerly Twitter. And we're going to take this conversation to the next level, starting from now up until the next hour. These conversations are here, so do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us here on Breakfast Central. Let's take a look at the news. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Olufemi Oluyede, has assured Nigerians that the Lakurawa terror group will soon be eliminated, citing ongoing joint military operations with neighbouring countries. Speaking to State House correspondents on Monday after a closed-door meeting with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the Aso Rock Villa in Abuja, Oluyede emphasized the importance of regional collaboration in addressing the cross-border threat posed by the group. The Army Chief expressed confidence in the effectiveness of the coordinated efforts, reiterating the commitment of the Nigerian Armed Forces to restoring peace and stability in affected areas. Also staying with that story, the Nigerian Army and their counterparts from Chad, Niger and other neighboring countries have begun joint patrols to counter cross-border threats posed by the Lakurawa terrorist group. The collaborative effort aims to restrict the group's movement as it has been linked to serious criminal activities in northern Nigeria and surrounding regions. This comes as the Sokoto state government voiced frustration over the challenge of containing the group due to Nigeria's porous borders. The Lakurawa group, affiliated with Sahel-based terrorists, particularly from Mali and Niger Republic, emerged as a national security concern following its audacious first attack on the 4th of November. Well, let's move on now and tell you that human rights lawyer and activist Dele Farotimi has been granted bail by an Ekiti State Magistrates Court. He was granted bail in the sum of 50 million naira with a surety in like sum. The court said the surety must own landed property, while the matter was adjourned to January 29, 2025 for further proceedings. Farotimi was remanded last week, Monday, by the court in Ado Ekiti for allegedly defaming the legal luminary Chief Afe Babalola in his recent published book, Nigeria and Its Criminal Justice System. There has been an outrage over his arrest and subsequent prosecution, with legal opinions divided over the actions instigated by Babalola. The Southeast Caucus in the Senate has joined calls for more extensive consultations on the tax reform bills currently before the National Assembly. Leader of the caucus and representative of Abia South, Senator Eyinaya Baribe, announced this after a closed-door meeting with senators from the 5 southeastern states held in his office. Abaribe clarified that the caucus is not opposed to the proposed bills, but insists that broader discussions are essential before the legislation moves forward for full consideration and passage in both chambers of the National Assembly. Well, let's wind things down in Ghana. Ghana's Electoral Commission has officially announced former President John Mahama as the winner of Saturday's presidential election, securing 56% of the vote. The declaration was made by the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Jean Mensah, following the resolution of disputes in key constituencies that initially delayed the collation process. Tensions across the nation eased significantly after Vice President Muhammadu Bawumia delivered a concession speech, effectively paving the way for Mahama's return to leadership. Post-election unrest in parts of the Savannah, Eastern and Greater Accra regions had temporarily disrupted the collation process. Despite these challenges, the announcement marks the conclusion of a closely contested race, with Mahama now set to lead Ghana once again. And that's all the news I will take for this hour. Make sure you join us again at the top of the hour for 9 a.m. West African time. For now, it's time for us to go full swing into our top stories here on Breakfast Central.
Nigeria's federal government says that it is collaborating with the United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organizations and the European Union to develop policies that will reposition the nation's creative sector for sustainable development. This was made known in the nation's capital, Abuja, by the Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and Creative Economy, while launching an initiative aimed at unlocking the huge potentials available in Nigeria's vibrant creative sector. Our correspondent, Idom Joseph, has more on this report.
The recent creation of the National Intellectual Property Policy and Strategy, the National Tourism Policy, and the review of the National Cultural Policy are considered key steps aimed at revolutionizing and projecting the nation's cultural sector, attracting investments, creating jobs, and promoting cultural exchange. With more policies set to be developed for the creative sector, UNESCO and the European Union have expressed their support to ensure that the policies are consistent with global standards.
It was under an application from the state of Nigeria through the ministry that they applied under a window which was made possible and available through UNESCO and thanks to the sponsorship of European Union.
We are doing this responding to the Mondiaco Declaration of Mexico City, which encouraged stakeholders to do this and enhance funding for cultural policies.
While commending Nigeria for considering culture as a key sector for development, UNESCO says that the initiative is in support of its objective, which seeks to promote the diversity of cultural expressions.
UNESCO, we are supporting the different countries, the member states, in implementing key conventions that cover the whole spectrum of culture, from the protection and preservation of natural and cultural heritage. This is the convention we call 1972.
Nigeria's Minister of Arts, Culture, Tourism and Creative Economy assured that the government is committed to creating the right framework to boost investment in the creative sector.
Let me assure you that the administration of His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, is focused on ensuring sustained partnerships for national development and is keen to create the right framework that encourages ease of doing business.
This initiative highlights Nigeria's determination to place its culture and creative sector at the forefront of economic and social development. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonk Joseph.
Very important there, harnessing the creative sector and the role that the creative sector has to play. I think there was a particular year that we can recall that Nollywood was one of the highest contributors to Nigeria's GDP.
Yeah.
And we've seen, I think it was 20, I'm not sure, I don't want to quote the year if I'm not certain about it. But we've seen over and over again the consistency and the creativity of our young people here in Nigeria, for example. The fact that we're starting to explore into other fields, those that are actors are now starting to explore with production, availing themselves of certain opportunities that YouTube will provide. But we can't deny the fact that even in the creative space, there are certain limits. And one of the biggest constraints that creatives have is money. If a creative has the opportunity to be able to just be what they are, a creative, and not think about the resources or not think about, oh, how do I fund this project? I think that there'll be so much more that can be achieved with the current restraints that we have. See how much they've done. Constantly, they're breaking their own records. Movies are going to box office. And I think it's just so exciting to witness. And as a Nigerian, to see that even when we see in different parts of the world, I mean, you've been to other parts of Africa where if you get there, they know our actors. They love our actors. They're asking, I remember going to somewhere in Namibia, and this particular place, the Damara, the Damara Living Museum, I remember, because they had people that were not dressed, people that have sort of rejected Western culture, so they dressed in like hide. And in my mind, I just thought, okay, these people don't know what's going on in the real world. It turns out they were asking me, where are you from? I said, I'm from Nigeria. They said, oh, we love Mr. Ibu. This was a number of years ago. So they're so much in love with the talent that, and it's not just in Nigeria, in the African continent. And another thing is I'm hoping to see more collaborations within the continent, not competition.
So that's the key. You just hit the nail on the head when you use the word collaboration. I mean, when streaming giants did come to Nigeria, it seemed like we had eventually gotten a place at the table. It was indeed I would say, a seismic shift. So everyone was actually looking forward to say, this is it. And then Lionheart came out. Lionheart did come out, and they had the likes of Genevieve and everyone. And then you could see how creative Nigerians could get. Sadly, it's a conversation we should have another time, talking about the exit of these streaming platforms, which has indeed helped our creativity and also put our creative space to the international community. But I'm going to challenge someone this morning. I tried sleeping yesterday and I said, listen, maybe you should say it on the show this one. I'm going to say it here. I want to say it at the end of the show. I'm challenging anybody to quickly create a platform. We don't need to wait for these guys to be on their platform. We can have our very own platform.
Well, I have a different thought towards
we should have our
conversation for another day.
And push our creativity out there in the world.
We do have our platform.
If China does...
We do have our platforms already.
We do, but
so
let's make it global.
Well, Henry, we will certainly need to have this conversation.
Let's make it global. We need to. Right. Anyway, over to you, Olive.
Let's move on to talk about other stories, looking at our human rights and human rights violation. Now, here in Nigeria, human rights record has come under increasing criticism with reports of police brutality, unlawful detentions, extrajudicial killings, gender-based violence, and suppression of free speech becoming alarmingly frequent. Despite President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's pledge to uphold the rule of law and protect human rights, his administration's actions have not necessarily upheld the standard. Recent incidents have highlighted the need for urgent reform. The arrest, for example, of activist and lawyer Dele Faratimi, the harassment of his staff and associates, the unlawful detention of minors participating in the End Bad Governance protest. These are just few examples of the widespread human rights violations occurring daily in Nigeria.
Well, the media has also faced intense abuse, with journalists being arbitrarily detained and harassed for reporting on corruption and human rights abuses. The Cybercrime Act has been used to silence journalists, with Section 24 being particularly problematic as it allows for the punishment of journalists for cyber stalking, with up to 3 years imprisonment or a fine of 7 million naira. Anyway, as Nigeria's human rights record continues to deteriorate, human rights organizations have called on the federal government of Nigeria to honor its constitutional obligations and international commitments to human rights. Joining us to discuss now is the chairman of Access to Justice Committee at the African Bar Association. We do have Sonny Ekwosi. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Well, so many a time, Amnesty International has continued to call out the Nigerian government, pointing to situations where there have been human rights abuses. What would you say the government could have done or can still do now to ensure that it upholds the view of human rights, especially in the lives of every single citizen?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. Today we are celebrating the International Day of Human Rights. And first of all, we need to understand that this celebration is not a ritual. It's something that is very, very important. To understand the meaning of human rights and the need to promote human rights, the government should first of all understand the foundation of human rights, in the sense that human rights, as Fela will say, is not a privilege, it's our property. You know, it's something that is natural to man, something that is intrinsic to every human being to respect his or her fundamental human rights. These are human rights that are prescribed in the Constitution: the right to be heard, the right to express yourself, and the right, freedom to enjoy your liberty. But unfortunately, we have seen the constant violation of human rights in Nigeria. The recent case is the case of Dele Faratimi, who was abducted from Lagos and sent to Ekiti State. I mean, we are happy that he has been granted bail now. But that's not all. That's not all. Journalists rights have been violated. People have been arrested, and so on and so forth. So today we need to reflect, and the government needs to go back to the drawing table and understand that without the promotion of human rights, our democracy does not mean anything. In fact, respect for human rights is central. It's at the basis of our democracy. And when human rights are constantly being violated, we are not living as human beings. Democracy is not being practiced, and there's no governance. Governance does not mean anything if this constant violation of human rights. So it is key, the practice of democracy. It is key to living as a people, It's key for exercise of power, If people who are in power constantly violate the human rights of the citizens, then we are in for a huge trouble. just to say, I mean, just to repeat what I've said before, that it is not a privilege, it's a right, no? It is a right that every human being should be allowed to exercise his or her human rights. And also for the leaders to understand that the human being predates the state, you know? As the human being was in existence before government came to be. In other words, the leaders have, it's their obligation to respect human rights, because the human being historically, philosophically, or metaphysically predates the state, you know? That is, was in existence, the human being was created, you know, in the image and likeness of God. And so what we understand in this way, we have to, the leaders should now appreciate why they should respect and all human rights. So it's not a privilege. It's not something that the leader can say, look, I choose. I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. It is something that is, it is a right that they respect, it is their obligation to respect human rights of every human being. And we are particularly disturbed by the way people are being hounded and being arrested. I've mentioned the case of the referendum, and there are others like that who have been arrested, journalists whose rights have been violated, and people who have been detained without trial. You go to the Nigerian Correctional Center, you will see that almost 80% of the awaiting trial inmates are people who are just there, people who have not been taken to court. There are many of them, you know, citizens who have been.
The interesting thing, if I may button there, is that, you know, today being International Human Rights Day, we've seen a number of the calls have been to ask that a number of these detention centers be visited, and that we start to look into the cases of people who have been unlawfully detained. There are people who have been there for the most flimsy reasons and have no reason to still be in detention. But unfortunately, because of what the current our criminal justice system is, this is the reality of what it is in Nigeria. You've mentioned unlawful arrest. I think that before we can start to look at progress, we have to look at where we currently are as a people. So unlawful arrest is one of the ways in which Nigerian citizens have been denied of their rights. But in the course of your experience so far, your observation and your work, what would you say are some of the most common abuses, human rights abuses, that Nigerians have to deal with on a daily?
Yeah, I mean, is this incessant arrest of ordinary people by the police and law enforcement agents, you know? And with the case of Dele Farah, to me, stands out because he's a human rights activist, and the people who arrested him, or the person that wrote the petition, Afe Babalola, is also well known. That's why we're hearing about it. But there are many, many, many cases of people who have been arrested illegally and dumped in detention. People who are found wandering and they have been arrested and dumped in detention. If you go to almost all the police stations in Nigeria, you have people who are detained there. Nothing has happened. They don't have a lawyer, and from there they go to Kriki or whatever. So the most common one is the daily arrest of people. It's almost happening on a daily basis. You know, armed robbery incident has occurred somewhere, and the police believe that they have to arrest people. And so they just arrest all the people who they found at the scene of the armed robbery and take them to prison. And they remain there. I go to prisons, and it is sad to see many Nigerians who have been languishing in prison. Some have spent up to 16 years without trial. I go to prison a lot, and it is sad. The police station also, I go there, people are being tortured. Like I said, we are not living as a people if these things go on daily basis. Our life is meaningless. The life we are living is meaningless if fellow citizens are being arrested on a daily basis and dumped in police stations and in prison, and they remain there for all the time. I'm a lawyer, and I feel sad that this is happening. And I call today that we are celebrating International Human Rights, to call on everybody, all stakeholders, to come to the talking table and find out what could be done. Because the human rights abuse in Nigeria is terrible.
But where does the bulk of the work lie? So if we can all agree that there's a challenge with human rights abuses, now we're looking at Nigeria's criminal justice system. Dele Farah has written a book, and he's now like the poster boy of having conversations, or the poster of criminal justice conversations right now, because what he's done in this book is to speak about certain rot he's perceived or he's seen or experienced. And yes, there are people who feel that they have been defamed and the matter will certainly go to court, I believe. But let's talk about where the bulk of the blame lies and where the cleaning needs to start up from. Is it from the judiciary that is supposed to be the last hope of the common man? Is it with security operatives who some have argued have no proper understanding about what the rights of the Nigerian citizen is or Nigerian citizens are? Or is it even with the citizens themselves, some who have no idea what their rights are, such that they don't even know when their rights are being abused?
All of us are involved with the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. The three arms of government are guilty in this, because you find that when these people who are randomly arrested, they are taken to prison, no effort is made to bring these people to trial or to even to grant them bail. See what happened in the case of the Farrell. If not for the outcry, probably will have still remained in detention at this moment. So everyone is involved. If you talk about the Nigerian criminal justice system, over the years, much has been said, but nothing has been done. Many reforms have been properly carried out, and over the years, nothing has happened. And that's why, maybe I would take the opportunity to urge the Tinubu administration to take some concrete actions. It's not just enough to say things. Over the years, we have been saying something about the deplorable criminal justice system in Nigeria, but nothing concrete has been done. Nothing concrete in the form of actually, reform. When they say they are carrying out reform, it's just something that is theoretical, okay? In the sense that people are being arrested and they're not taken to court. Maybe the Nigerian Bar Association should find a way of maybe assigning lawyers to go to prison and take these people who are awaiting trial to court. And when they are taken to court also, the thing of incessant, rampant court adjournments, or the court is not sitting, when they are brought to court, they are not even, nothing has happened at the end of the day, and they go back to prison. Even in the case of there are people who have even granted bail, who are still languishing in prison as we speak. So that's why I'm saying that all stakeholders, legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, the executive in itself should do something in way of, I don't know, if it means regular visit to prisons. I'm talking about the governors of state now, to carry out regular visits to prisons and see what they can do to reassess the state of the various correctional centers.
Okay.
We call them correctional centers, but they are punitive centers, because people there see what is happening really.
All right, Mr. Gomsi.
All of us are guilty.
Yeah. All right, you said enough, and correctively, you've pointed that our very own judiciary needs a lot of restructuring, and I think you're not the first who has said this. A lot of lawyers have equally said so, but it still baffles many Nigerians why a lot of persons have not come out to speak up and stand firmly to call for this change, especially within the lawyers. But then again, I want to say thank you so much for your time. Like you said, today we mark the World Human Rights Day, and we hope that someday Nigerians will get it right. But if we don't, we'd like to bring you back to also hear what you have to say as we mark today. Hopefully before next year, the CJN would come out with a reform. Thank you so much for your time, for joining us, especially. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
All right.
Well, let's move on down to our next story. Leaving that one, let's go to Ghana, where Ghana's Electoral Commission has declared former President John Mahama the winner of Saturday's presidential election with 56.55% of the vote. Vice President and ruling party candidate Mahamudu Bawumia conceded defeat on Sunday to ease the tensions, if you recall.
The commission announced results from 267 of 276 constituencies, with voter turnout at 60.9%. Mahama returns to power after serving as president from 2012 to 2016. Addressing supporters, he pledged to meet the aspirations of Ghanaians and avoid the governance failures that led to the country's recent economic crisis.
Let me clear a few things first. One, about my Nigerian antecedents. My stepmother is Nigerian, who raised me, and she comes from Kwara State, and so what Kayode was explaining was that at a point in time when there had been a coup in Ghana. My father lived in exile here in Nigeria, and I had to come and stay with my stepmother for many years in Offa, so I know Offa quite well. And I consider that my hometown here in Nigeria. And the Olofa of Offa was very gracious to grant me a chieftaincy title. And so for those of you who don't know, I'm the Are Atolashi of Offa Kingdom.
Well, quite an expose there. Anyway, joining us to discuss what this win means for Ghanaians and the Ghana economy is Director of Business Operations at Dalex Finance. Joe Jackson joins us this morning. Pretty much we share the same initials, if I may say. Good morning to you, and welcome to Breakfast Central.
Good morning, and good to be on your program this morning. It's a good morning in Ghana.
Oh, great, great. Let me start off first by saying, how does it feel like, especially for you and for other Ghanaians, looking at the fact that you do have a vice president by the name Professor Okpoku Nana Jane Ageman, one that everyone is talking about as it's unprecedented, looking at the fact that, she's a woman. What's your take on that?
I started by saying it's an excellent day for Ghana, and it's a good day because first and foremost, the elections were largely, and I say largely, there were isolated incidents of violence, but they were largely without violence. And the quick concession by the vice president made things even simpler. And then we've chalked a very important first, which is that we have a female vice president, a woman who was the first female vice chancellor in the country, was a minister of state for education, and now is the vice president-elect. It's an exciting time for all Ghanaians, and we feel that for the first time, there's enough diversity in the government to make a big difference. She's a fine, upstanding woman, and we only have good things to say about her.
I think it's a wonderful time to be a woman, and it's a wonderful time for women. I mean, in the past, I think 1 or 2 weeks, we're hearing now of Ghana's female vice president, and we've also heard about Namibia's president, who, of course, is the country's first female president. So very exciting times indeed, and we look forward to seeing more women emerging in positions of leadership. But let's talk about what the key areas will be. We know that Ghana's economy has been one major area of struggle, especially within the past administration, within the current administration. It's been one area of criticism. So what would you say are some of the key areas that the new president will need to tackle head on, especially looking at it vis-a-vis the expectations of Ghanaians?
The new president has asked for, or the new president-elect has asked for a honeymoon. And I believe that is going to be very critical to his being able to meet the expectations of Ghanaians. He says, give me 6 months where I can start to take charge of the situation and do what is necessary to be done. Listen, Ghana's economy is in the doldrums, and everything is now about the economy, the economy, the economy. And he needs to take charge of the economy. The first problem we face is that we've been locked out of the international markets and cannot borrow. Yet at the same time, if we say we're going to just exist on revenue we raise locally, the economy is going to crash. At the same time, he's actually promised to to take off what he calls some nuisance taxes. His first problem will be revenue generation. How do I generate new forms and sources of revenue in this current system? The second problem was, how do I get back to the international markets so that I can relieve the pain of Ghanaians? It's a tough one. He's between a rock and a very hard place. The other expectations of Ghanaians will be that there's a lot of talk about corruption, and he's promised a program called Operation Recover or Loot, oral, and he says he's going to recover all monies that have been put away wrongly. Ghanaians are expecting that he does that. If he doesn't recover the loot, in quotes, Ghanaians will be angry because we feel that the government that has just been voted out has been extremely corrupt. It's also not going to be easy because he has to do this within the confines of the law. So here's a tough one. He has to fix the economy, and he has to attack the issue of corruption.
All right. Looking at the economy, trying to revive it back, you also have the issue of corruption, like you've rightly said. Let's also look at one aspect, which has to do with providing, especially jobs for the youths. Like I've taken note of, Ghana has similarities with that of Nigeria in terms of its challenges. For instance, the CD has fallen at least by 70% in its value. So an exchange rate of the CD to a dollar is what you could liken to what you see in Nigeria to the dollar. Could you help us with a clear picture of how bad is it, especially for Mahama as he's coming on board as president? How bad is it for him to take Ghana from where they are to where they're going to, focusing on the youths and job creation?
This is as bad as you can imagine. Listen, 2 years ago, 2024, 2.5 years ago, 2022, 2.5 years ago, if you got paid 600 CDs, you would get $100. Today, if you got paid 600 CDs, you get $30.
Wow.
Or $32. That's wiped out. Anything from 68 up to 68% of your purchasing power is just gone. There are no jobs. The public purse, government coffers are empty. We've been locked out of the international market. We cannot borrow. We are under an IMF regime. There's not enough revenue being raised. The government cannot create jobs by just going out and doing the whole thing of creating programs and employing the youth. This time, jobs are only going to be created because you get the SME sector to work. Meanwhile, the SME sector is hamstrung by an extremely high inflation rate. I could go on and on. That's why I say that this President-elect Mahama is between a rock and an extremely hard place.
Right.
He's got to get the SME sector going. He's got to create a way, he's got to find a way to bring interest rates down almost immediately so that the SME sector can get going. Yet at the same time, he needs to borrow. The country will crash if he doesn't borrow. And yet, all the debts that we've accumulated are going to come due starting February 2025. In 3 months' time. That's not a very pleasant place to be.
All right.
And really, it's going to be a tough one. If he can even do half the things he's promised to do, this country will hail him as one of the best presidents ever.
How important is the conversation about Galamsey in looking at restoring Ghana's economy? There are those who believe that if the problem of illegal mining can be tackled in Ghana, that to a large extent, Ghana's economy will return to what it should be. Is that a perspective that you agree with? And how much focus do you think the incoming president will be able to focus on this?
Galamsey represents in one swoop the best opportunities for Ghana to get out of its current challenges. Estimates of Ghana's gold deposits are as high as $10 trillion. Our gold estimates, our gold deposits are much bigger than oil deposits that we have. And if we fix the issue of Galamsey, We have the prospect of exporting gold to get ourselves out of the challenges we have. But the Galamsey challenge is intractable. It employs anything up to 500,000 Ghanaian youth directly and indirectly about 3 million people. The practices are so bad that half of Ghana's water bodies have been destroyed, have turned into muddy brown. There's lead in our water that we drink, heavy metals, and we are in deep trouble because of the practices of this illegal mining. The illegal miners have a lot of money and have bought local authorities to stop them from intervening in their operations. So that is another huge problem. And yet, if he resolves the issue of illegal mining, if he gets on the right side of the international market with regards to sustainable gold mining, that could be one sure way of getting out of Ghana's problems.
Okay. Well, I think you've highlighted some of these key areas, and we would be hoping to see if some of these challenges can be nipped in the bud. We do have a little time left, but we'd like to go on a quick break. And at this juncture, I want to also say thank you so much for taking time to join us. You've broken all of these things down, helping us to see the possibility of getting Ghana back on track. Thank you so much for joining us. Director of Business Operations at Dalex Finance, Joe Jackson. Thank you for your time.
A little correction, I'm the CEO of Dalex Finance.
CEO, great. All right, thank you so much for joining us, the CEO, Joe Jackson. Thank you for your time.
Thank you too. Bye.
All right, okay. We'll go on a quick break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the stories we've had this first hour. Stay with us.
Thank you for staying tuned. And if you're just joining us, we're about to review the newspapers to see what the front pages are saying. And we have with us public affairs analyst Charles Ideho. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me this morning.
All right, now let's begin with the Daily Independent newspaper. 2027, it's injustice to preclude North from running, article says South would have done 17 years and North would have done 11 years. This is, of course, in reaction to a certain interview that was granted. But we'll talk about this in details shortly. Economy showing promising signs ahead 2025, says Wale Edun on page 29. And then I think that's pretty much it. It's an easy story there. But that's all that we have on the front page of the Daily Independent. Now let's move to the Leadership newspaper.
All right, going to the Leadership newspaper very quickly. Let's take a look at what we have there on the front page. We'll crush Lakurawa terror group soon. I think before we even crush the group, permit me to say, I think we need to really get the pronunciation of this terror group. There is Lakurawa in some quarters, and then there's Lakurawa in some quarters. So I think we would beg on the Chief of Army Staff and, of course, the Head of Communications for the Defense Headquarters to please clarify this, especially seeing that different news outlets use either of the two interchangeably. So we need to know which one. It might be a
spelling error. I think it's more Lakurawa.
Yeah, I mean, there's Lakurawa, there's Lakurawa. I think it's more Lakurawa. There's so many.
But I think it's just like here in Lagos. We all know a place called Katangwa, right?
Yes,
we all call it Katangwa.
Katangura.
It's Katangwa where they sell the used clothes and all that. But sure. that's not the pronunciation. It's an outside word for everybody's pride. It's not Katangwa. It's Gatankowa.
What?
Kowa is market.
In market,
Gatankowa, market of everybody's pride. But we call it Katangwa, and the Katangwa has stayed. So whether it's Lakurawa or Lakurawa.
12 and a dozen, right? At the end
exactly.
Of the day,
so that's why I mean it's
absolutely
just like
okay. So
absolutely.
Chief of Army Staff has promised that they will help crush Lakurawa soon, and we hope that that promise is able to be fulfilled.
Sure. Let's also take a look at some other papers there as well. Other stories is on the leadership as well. Let's see another one. This one says 2 trillion naira debt. Darkness looms as NMDPRA holds gas supply to Gencos. Before it was December and fuel scarcity, now it's power.
And it's not also collapse of the national grid.
Okay, it's not the collapse this time. Okay. It's not. Akume Atiku, trade words over 2027 presidency. That is a big conversation that started off yesterday evening, and it's still big up until now. Let's see another one. Nigeria leads West Africa in diaspora remittances, according to Shatima. Okay. Another one says Farotimi gets 50 million naira bail. That's a story to look forward to. And so many other stories inside of the leadership. But let's move on to our next paper very quickly.
All right, on the front page of this Nigerian newspaper, yeah, you just said it, you took it out of my mouth too. You can see here again is Lakurawa. Lakurawa terror group in disarray, driven to Niger Republic, says Army Chief Oluyede. There'll soon be history as Niger is also hitting them from their end. Wike backs amendment of Ted Fund Act to accommodate law school. Lambastos criticizing him for supporting judiciary. Farotimi arraigned, granted 50 million naira bail. Edo Tribunal sitting marred by chaos. Third, Ajaib files petition to void Aiyedatiwa's victory in Ondo. Tax reform bill, Southeast senators make U-turn, opt for wider dialogue. Now, before we get into the details of these papers and have our guests join us to run through these papers, we'll be connecting with our anchor correspondent who's live in Ghana to bring us update from the Ghana elections. The result has been officially announced. Ghana has a new president-elect and a new female vice president-elect, which is very exciting. But now let's hear from Bernard Akede. Good morning, Bernard. Talk to us about the mood now that it's been official that Ghana has a new president-elect as well as a female vice president-elect.
Yeah, and let's add a first, like you clearly stated, first female vice president-elect. Good morning, Olive, and good morning, guys, back home in Nigeria. Look, the mood here in Ghana is it's been ecstatic. The past, would I say, 48 or maybe 72 hours have been quite monumental, if I may add. Something that even if you're not Ghanaian, you would feel the adrenaline rush, particularly from yesterday evening. There's no need recounting the whole drama of the elections. I think it's a story that we all know too well. But leading up until yesterday evening, when it was time to announce the final results, to declare John Mahama as the president-elect in Ghana, that was another moment of excitement, I must tell you. The win was so emphatic that as at the time the last region being Kumasi region, the Ashanti region, which is where Kumasi is, where we came from, before getting to Accra yesterday, there were still 6 or 9, as a matter of fact, constituencies that they couldn't get results from. However, the Electoral Commission chairperson did say that regardless of that fact, that 9 constituency results didn't come, those results would have still been inconsequential after doing the calculations. That shows you, the kind of victory that John Mahama won by. So eventually they read out all the results, and John Mahama won by a pretty good number. Now, moving from the announcement center to his residence, I think it's the office residence, it was a Herculean task trying to get in there. But eventually when we got in there, it was nothing short of a carnival. It was a sensational carnival. Announcing his victory, and then announcing the fact that Ghana now has a new female vice president-elect, was also something that was quite monumental, I must confess. And as at the moment now, the stage is set. Also, one good thing I know that they keep mentioning is that they are not oblivious of the fact that they know that there is work to be done. That's one. Two, remember John Mahama has run 4 years before, which means he only has 4 years to run this time. So he used this proverbial term, hit the ground running. Many Nigerians will not like that, but that's what he said. We have to hit the ground running because time is not on our side. So again, it's quite an exciting period for most Ghanaians, except if you're on the opposition side. But even regardless of that fact, you know that there's work to be done. Ghanaians say they need a change. So right now, it's not about who is in power. It's about what that person can do for Ghana.
Well, you've talked about Ghanaians needing a change. I think you need a change as well, because it's like Ghana is really working for you, Bernard. I'm just saying, see you this morning. Anyway, my final question to you, just bring us up to speed with the outgoing party, talking about President Nana Akufo-Addo Has he said anything yet? Because he seems to be, we've not seen his name in the press or print or media as well. Has he spoken to Ghanaians as well, aside from his vice president, talking about Bawumia?
Well, he hasn't said anything to the best of my knowledge at this moment. The only thing we heard, the closest we heard from him was in John Mahama's, would I say, acceptance speech, where he said he recently got a call from the president who congratulated him and who told him that work has to speedily be done. They need to inaugurate the transition team, and I think that will be done in the next few days, as a matter of fact. Right. So that shows you how speedily they want to get things moving. But besides that, the closest we've heard, like you clearly stated, was the concession speech given by Mahamudu Bawumia, who's the current vice president. After that, it's been radio silence, from that particular party. Even, our chauffeur who took us around yesterday was saying he had some friends, strong card-carrying members of that party. Some of them have even, switched off their phones and deactivated some of their social media platforms for now, and you can only imagine why. It's a defeat that they weren't expecting, and least of all, weren't expecting to be this heavy.
Bernard, you've been very, very active in covering Nigeria's elections for years now. You've also just covered Ghana's elections. Now, I want you to do an analysis of both and let us know what lessons you've learned. Mahmoud Yakubu says that Ghana has learned a number of lessons from Nigeria's elections. Do you agree with that? If yes, maybe you can share with us. And if you don't agree with us, share with us, the ways in which our electoral process differs.
Well, in case I don't have the opportunity to say this, let me quickly say that Nigeria's smoky jollof rice is better than Ghana's. I think we can put that to rest to start with.
Great.
Thank you. Besides that, I'll quickly put certain things into perspective, and then I'll let you guys be the judge of it. I was in Kumasi, and elections were supposed to start by 7 a.m. Electoral officials got there before 7 a.m. Materials got there before 7 a.m. Elections started exactly 7 a.m. on the dot. Voters were there before 7 a.m. They joined the queues seamlessly. That's one. Two, they testified to the fact that they had more polling stations in different areas, which meant that the time it took them to vote 4 years ago, it would have taken them like maybe half that time to cast their vote this election. That's two. Three, it's no secret, I've been singing it since, that on the voting day, it was business as usual. People could move around. They didn't have to shut down the entire country. They didn't have to shut down traffic. There was no curfew. There was movement all through from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. when votes were being cast, and that there was no unnecessary harassment by security operatives. As a matter of fact, the only time we met, any police checkpoint was late that night of the election day, where we saw some police checkpoints, and very few of them in Kumasi. Nobody harassed me, nobody harassed anybody else. There was also the fact that to check, even we, I would say not electoral staff, but the press, our voting cards, I don't have mine here now, I would have shown you on air, had some kind of QR code where all you need to do is to put your camera and scan it, and then you have the details of this particular, press official. It'll tell you who the person is, where the person is from, as long as they've registered. And these are just a few things that were put in place. Now compare this, Olive, to what we had during our own election, I think last year it was. Again, I say I would let you be the judge of that and tell me who needs to learn from who. Again, there could be those claiming that, well, Ghana's population is just about 2/3 of what you have in Lagos State alone. Maybe that could be one of the reasons why it was easy to control just about less than 40 million people. As regards over 200 million, I don't know. But clearly, there's a lot that I think I can take away from this. And even the ambassador of the United States to Ghana yesterday spoke, and I think we have that clip, talked about certain things that she would have found impressive concerning Ghana's elections and the way they conducted it. So I think, again, you be the judge. There are a couple of things that one can take home from the election that has recently been concluded here.
Well, you've really, thank you very much for giving us these points. I think John and I won't be the judge. We'll let our audience be the judge. But the one thing that we've seen here is if anyone brings up the population argument, okay, you want to limit it to states. Let's forget about the general elections then, and maybe even do a comparison with the off-cycle elections that have happened in certain states, you will see the difference. At least nobody is threatening you with...
Like they say in class, before we tell Bernard bye-bye, if we even want to compare in states, if Ghana is between, like, let's say 35 million, for instance, or 40, Lagos is about 30 to 35 million as well, just one state. And nobody came out with Koboko and Kane. Nobody won somebody. I mean, Saturday was indeed interesting. But thank you so much, Bernard. If we have this conversation, I'm sure we would not continue our papers. Thank you for joining us, Bernard.
Please come back quick, Bernard.
Don't come back. Don't come back. Stay behind. Actually, it's actually right. It's actually in Twi. How do they say bye-bye? I think so.
Wow. I think it's actually, I'm still learning, but I know that welcome is Akwaba.
And to do reports. Please go and learn a few words. Thank you so much for joining us, Bernard.
All right. Anyway,
let's now bring the conversation back into the studio.
Only permit me to just ask our guests
his thoughts, exactly. Let's start with that.
Thoughts on the Ghana elections in comparison to...
Well, I'm listening to Arcadia. I'm just smiling here. I think Professor Mahmoud Yakubu should have just kept quiet. There was absolutely no need, no necessity at all for him to have spoken. You said Ghana got some things to learn from us. Maybe Ghana used beavers. Maybe beavers, I don't know whether they use IREV or whatever they use, sort of these nomenclatures. But I think we should learn from Ghana. Going by what the young man over there, the correspondent, said about no harassment, no shutting down the economy for over 12 hours and all that. If that is what we can pick away from Ghana, and also to ensure that votes are counted as and when due, and voters will also go polling units. You can't say you want to start, for instance, the voting by 7 a.m. Then officials don't come until 12 and 10 and 12.
Can I mention what some of the ways, some of the noble things that they've learned from Nigeria are, according to him? He's talked about political parties. He says the first thing is the political parties. He says, really in Ghana, do you see people moving from one party to another with every election?
I disagree. In Ghana, I've not been to Ghana, but I have a friend of mine, he's also a friend of this house, Theophilus Akatuba, who lived in Ghana for a number of years. And so he's been a friend, but he's been on my radio program over and over. We keep discussing about it. Now, what I understand in party politics in Ghana, once you were NDP, for instance, it becomes as if you have this umbilical cord tied to it. You know the Igbo land. I lived in Igbo land before. You know how Catholicism is over there. If you left Catholicism for maybe Pentecostal, you're leaving your parents behind, they might ostracize you to say, what are you going to be doing over there? So it's like, they have Catholicism in their blood, the Igbo. So if somebody you don't just live with Catholic Church and go somewhere. They'll think you are mad, you understand? It's the same way I understand in Ghana, leaving one party for another party. Your family, people will say, oh, are you crazy or something? What are you looking for over there? Because you are sold to the ideology of that party, you are sold to the ideas, you are sold to everything that party. Just like, is it easy for people to cross from being Man U fan and cross over to Liverpool? So it's the same thing. Once you're Liverpool,
I think he agrees with that. He's saying that they're sort of loyal to the parties. What I don't understand.
But we don't have loyalty to the party over here.
He's saying that they learned it from us because that is how we are. Or that he's saying that they learned it because it's a mistake that we've made. So I want to assume that he's saying that they've learned to be loyal to party. Exactly, it is a big.
Because even article that is in the news.
Yeah.
Article has cross.
Yes, crisscross.
A number of them cross capitals.
It was from PDP to ACN in Southwest that time. When it was, from ACN he went back to PDP, and then PDP, APC, PDP. So would you say that's something that we have?
The second and final one I'm going to point out is the area of managing constituency election results. It says until the last election in Ghana, all results come to the Electoral Commission's headquarters in Accra, which is parliamentary and presidential. Although Ghana is not a federal system, they learned from Nigeria, where you have returning officers who announce results for parliamentary elections in the various constituencies around the country. Only the presidential election results come to Accra. And they said that in Nigeria, this is what we have done.
So would it be improper if I said he should keep quiet?
Okay.
Well,
let's say it.
I think the truth is, we all know the truth, right? Yeah, I think that solves it. Since we all know the truth.
Nigerians know the truth.
Nigerians know. I mean, the reactions are there online from a cross section of Nigerians, and they do know.
I think they just I think what I think we should do rather is for Mahmoud to borrow from Ghana. Ghana's INEC, I don't know what they call their own body.
Electoral
Ghana's Electoral Commission.
Mahmoud maybe we should give him some money, go to Ghana.
But you already collected 300 billion, no?
No, it's not going to go to Ghana. Ghana is not part of it now.
I know, but
we should give him more money to go to Ghana, then get all the files.
I'm saying you already collected 300 billion in 2020.
All right, let's hear from Tony, who's calling from Gwarimpa. Good morning, Tony. Please go ahead with your comments.
Thank you very much. I'm Tony from Gwarimpa. I want to congratulate the Ghanaians for a well-conducted election. Ghana is becoming a democratic model for Africa. For me, Nigeria should be. We have more to learn from Ghana than Ghana from us. Look at everything seamless. Producing the first vice president. We shall have our own first vice president. It's an example for us. And our people like me have been advocating, we should have an election on working days. Nothing like holidays for anybody. Because in America, the election is going on, people are going to work. We shouldn't shut down our country because of elections. That's lesson number one from Ghana. Normal work should go ahead. And all our election for me should be one day. To reduce costs. And it will be one day. Local government election, state government to be elected one day. Everything one day, and it's cost effective. We need money to fix our infrastructure. We don't need to waste money unnecessarily. Lesson from Ghana. It should be a model. For me, it's a collective shame. So for the future of Nigerians, and this issue of vote buying, INEC will ban it. And also be ready to have our female INEC chairman, every man. Where are we taking our country to? We should get women. Leadership is intentional and deliberate.
Thank you very much for calling.
We feel your pain, Tony.
Thank you very much. You can see how very upset he is. That is quite understandable.
Another thing, okay, you also look at, did we hear that military people, everybody was...
That was what I wanted to highlight. That days before, that military show-off that we do in Nigeria,
in 2020,
that you think you're at war.
In 2020, I have been covering election for a while. In 2020, I was in the Edo State to cover the election. We went out the three central zone, and when I returned to Benin, I mean, there were incidents of people, I mean, some Mopo not having anywhere to sleep. They took them to primary schools and all that, and nowhere to sleep. Two women, I mean, you know, because of the nature of women, I mean, a party member took these women in, said the wife should take care of them. Imagine that party member taking policemen in, giving them more money. How do you think the policeman is going to...
Of course, you're going to influence...
Of course, it's going to influence the whole thing. And then you militarize the whole thing. What you have done is that you put a fright upon people. People are afraid to move everywhere, to move from here. So, and then you shut down people. There are people who depend on everyday, stipends to feed. Somebody, for instance, you have a vulcanizer. Who you have precluded, you have prevented the person from going to. You have people who are barbers. People, the everyday people, they depend on these daily takings for them to feed. But for 12 hours, you shut them out, and then you think that's democracy. We did it in the beginning. Yeah. In the beginning, it was okay. The other of us were just time because we were just learning. When it was, they call it, is it nascent or something? Nascent democracy. Are we saying is this nascent now? So, how many years? I mean, is it about 23, if I'm not mistaken? So a child who's 23 years old is in the university. It should be doing for masters.
Yeah, it's more than 23.
Masters and PhD and so on.
And if a lady that was born 23 years ago, some of them are mothers today.
Like
of course. And we're still learning.
But bottom line, another thing we should look at the elections. I mean, since we've stuck on that topic, even though we have it in one of our front pages where the incoming president or the president-elect is being congratulated by different presidents and, of course, former heads of state. Another key thing is those who were of age, who were older. I mean, on Saturday while we were here covering the elections, you would see that time was given. There were so many available polling units. People who were older, between the ages of 80 to 90, were carried.
As the senior citizens.
Yes, there were videos. I mean, our reporter, Bernard, and of course, Afia Hagan, there were videos where you would see the older people are being lifted from their cars. They were carried on stretchers, and they were taken to the polling unit so they could just their thumb, and then they take them back into the car. That's one. Two, the atmosphere was very calm. Let's also not forget to highlight the fact that there were skirmishes of, a little law breaking there and there. For instance, on Thursday, before the election, somewhere in the northern region and the west, they had seen ballot papers. Beforehand. What was done was the Electoral Commission of Ghana called on all the political parties, but two showed up, the NPP and the NDC, and they burned the papers right in front of them. Okay? Friday, the same thing happened. They saw a similar thing and they burnt it. Saturday, we saw everywhere was calm. I mean, we
can't even downplay the fact that people plan not to be in Nigeria during elections. I know people take their families abroad because they don't know how the elections will turn out.
Because they're frightened. I remember
we are praying.
Was it 2015? Yeah, 2015 that brought in the APC. I said it was as if Armageddon was coming.
If I'm being honest, I was nervous.
I went somewhere at one popular shopping complex. It was a shopping complex I met. Just to get a few items. I remember a woman who was there. He was buying. But people say, we need to buy some stuff because of war.
A lot of people do that. I mean,
I asked her if war was going to be for about 3 years, would this still take you for 3 years? Okay, let's just start it personally, but there was no good benefit.
I would like us to move away from the last election so we can go into another story. But all of this just highlights a deficiency in our electoral system.
Yeah, it is.
That needs to be fixed.
And it is deliberate.
Of course.
I can tell you it is deliberate.
I can imagine that.
Can we get it right? The answer is yes. Will we get it right? The answer is no.
Well,
because there are people who are feasting from this impropriety in the electoral process. People who are, this warped system is holding the ladder up for them to climb over there. They have no right to climb. They have no strength to climb. But because of the warped system, they can climb over the ladder and then rush over everyone. So if you set the record straight, if you make the processes straight, most of the people will never find their ways there. So because they are there improperly, they want to remain there improperly. It's like somebody getting into a door, or maybe you get into and then locking the door and throwing the key into the lagoon.
Yeah.
Go and look for it.
All right, since we are still talking about elections and getting into office, the legality, impropriety, or otherwise of that, George Akume had made a statement about the elections and the North, saying that they should wait till President Bola Ahmed Tinubu finishes his 8-year tenure. It's supposed to be 4 years for those who are not our Nigerian audience. But there's always this subtle assumption that anyone who gets into office for the first time will more often than not get a second term, except your President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan.
Yes.
So in this scenario, what are your thoughts? He has asked the North to wait till 2031. 2031, I beg your pardon. Okay. And then Atiku, of course, does not agree with him. But let's get your thoughts on it.
Okay, well, first, I think George Akume, the Secretary of the Governor of Federation, he actually was looking at, we started this thing, not that he deliberately mooted that. What he said was that his utterances started from defending the now vexed tax reform bill. So he was saying the North has no cause to be afraid that the tax reform bill, if it's passed, that they not even benefit more from it. That because there are politicians in the system, particularly who have northern extraction, who always want to look for ways to kick whatever is good, just like the tax reform bill. So whether it is good or not, they want to kick it. So those people are the ones who are saying they want to now do everything possible in order to paint this government in bad light because of their 2027 ambitions. What he was saying to us was, look, let's not politicize over it. Let's look at how this thing can benefit the North. If you are in a hurry, why don't you wait till 2031 so that let this government do what it wants to do, and then we hope that when it does this right, it might gain a re-election. Then, and number two is that the power equation that oscillate between the north and the south, you know, is 8 years for the north and 8 years for the south. So you cannot be aiming to unseat the southern person who is there, who is qualified, even though it's not concerned about, at least by convention, is qualified to run for 2 terms concurrently. So what that's what the article now said, because I think also have vested interest. In our article say, if it is by the grace of God, if you will be the president of this country, even if you are 90 years old, just wait, you will still be. But please, let us not unsettle the whole thing. That's exactly what he said. But for me, I don't think anything is bad with what Akume said. But I think we took it out of context and begin to now run it, and then we are discussing immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen, we did see Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the likes. We did see how horrifying some of their statements were. I thought it was something that they could control until eventually you hear what they say, even going as far as talking about their family members. Talking about how it was horrible.
It's just not to
but we're Africans. It doesn't mean that we have to toe the same line.
Yeah, but to come back to that, I mean, there can be sense to, I mean, there are those who would argue that there is sense to what Atiku and, I mean, in representation, Paul Ibe are saying.
Yes.
In terms of Nigerians so far, a number of them have complained terribly about the current administration.
Yes.
It's not further maths to see that people can't even afford the basic necessities of life.
Yes.
I think the first time we're seeing that a large number of even Southerners would agree with the president is the tax reform bill.
Yes.
That's the first time we're seeing a number of people lend their support to the president. Before now, it's always one issue or another. So what people are saying is, if somebody has served you for the first tenure and you're not impressed with how the person has served, how about you give them another opportunity? It should not be assumed that that position automatically is given to the person a second time.
No, it's not talking about automatic. Akume wasn't saying automatic ticket. He was saying about the power equation, power balancing. That right now APC is there, and it is, as we say, it is the turn of the South to run 8 years. Even if Tinubu is not going to be there, he has to, you know,
so it's not necessarily about the person?
It's not about the person. Also say it's about the region. The South. For instance, I'll give an example. I mean, this thing almost tore Lagos State into shreds last time. Because there is also, it's a convention in Lagos State that you have this Muslim-Christian balancing. So a Christian will run for 8 years, and then a Muslim will run for 8 years. So Fashola, who ran 8 years, a Muslim, Ambode came here a Christian. Ambode ran for 4 years, and then they were bringing another Christian, a Muslim, and said, no, it is the Christians that will have to run it for 8 years. So when the man who is there now, Babaji Sanwo-Olu, now finished his first tenure, they now say, okay, they calculated it. They say, okay, he completed the Christians 8 years. So then there was this issue of, why don't you bring another person to now do the Muslim? They now said, no, let the man do his 8 years. Now, the Muslims in Lagos State, they're not saying that they've been cheated, because by the time Sanwo-Olu finishes his tenure, it will be 12 years.
Is that not the same thing that the Southerners are saying here?
That's what I'm saying.
It will be 17 years.
I think we're putting.
So you see, do they matter? Are they supposed to matter?
Whilst we can argue that they don't matter, on the other hand, there's also inclusion and representation. A number of people would say that if we keep acting like these things,
yes, I understand. Because
a fraction of the population will feel cheated and not feel adequately represented.
I come from Edo State. We've always had that, even though it benefits where I come from, for instance. Edo stands for the tripod, just as every other state. You have the Edo South, Benin speaking, Edo Central, Eastern speaking, then Edo North, Afema speaking. Then when you get to Edo, it also stands on the tripod. You have the Afema, you have the Onwa where I come from, and then you have Akoko Edo. Now, power has been oscillating, since 2008, power has been oscillating between the North and the South.
Not yet
the central.
Yes.
So why is why we say no? Why don't we just allow because you know the voting strength of the central is very weak. In a manner of speaking, 5 local governments compared to 6 local governments up north, and then 7 down south. So that's okay. If you allow this thing to continue, the ESA man may never, may never get to that place. So which is why they now came up with an agreement. Okay, the bigger parties, let them allow their tickets to go to ESA. Whether it's PDP that wins, it will be ESA. Whether it's APC, that's why you have an ESA man there today. So it's a gentleman agreement, not that it has nothing to do with governance. Because if you continue to look at all these things, sometimes a Dundee, in the manner of speaking, may come from another place. But it's okay, let him be there.
And then it leads to problems. I think it's also breeding a lot of challenges that Africa is facing now.
Yes, exactly.
We're focusing so much on
ethnic balancing and religious balancing.
That's where we are. Thank you so much.
If you go back to where this began, it's in the 1950s.
But it's been like that.
It's been like that. Have we grown?
No, but
have we grown?
You heard of a state called Bende. That's not Edo.
Of course.
I mean, what created that state was because of this issue of non-inclusion. The Midwest was in Western Nigeria, but they will say, okay, because the people from Benin,
and then we have the same issue brewing now.
Exactly. So because they are not Yoruba,
new states about to be created for the Igbo because
okay,
of course.
Let me give you that may shock you. I say, okay, somebody is Akbata, Akbata Tony K. What's the meaning? Akbata that has a K in the spelling is not Yoruba.
Thank you so much.
The arguments will keep going on and on. We have a lot of growing done where we can move. I don't know that if we can ever get over this conversation.
We can't.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going on a very quick break, and when we come back, more to come this morning. Stay with us. It's been 16 days of activism that started on the 25th of November and culminates on the 10th of December, and we're talking about gender-based violence, kicking against gender-based violence, which is why we're having this story. When in 2022, Forthcoming Ogunsusi set out to engage the services of Mide, a young graphics designer, to help her render services to her client. Little did she know that her one good deed will lead to her putting her life on hold for the next 2.5 years. The report that you're about to watch is one of our special investigative series which follows the story of Forthcoming Ogunsusi, a young aspiring events manager and teacher who was drugged, raped, and impregnated by her colleague. News Central's special correspondent on investigative journalism, Marshal Anthony Onoye, reports. We'll have you know that this is just a snippet of the actual investigative piece by our correspondent, and that will be bringing you a bigger one, the documentary, which is set to premiere tonight on News Central at 8:30 p.m. West African time. Remember that you can watch News Central on DSTV 422, Star Times 274, and our YouTube channel, News Central TV. Now let's take a look.
Meet Forthcoming Ogunsusi. Forthcoming makes a living for herself by running errands for people and providing surprise packages while also teaching college children online. She does all of these while still catering to her daughter, whom the doctors say has a medical condition characterized by several holes in the heart and a severe physical deformity. For Forthcoming, her whole world came crashing down when she encountered Mide. Mide will later turn out to rape and impregnate Forthcoming.
He came to school that day, and that was the first time we are going to encounter. And he said he does graphic design and he does logo. So I called him that day, Alpha, please, I need this job. He said, no, it's not done. I should come over to his house. I said, okay. He went out, he brought Fanta. I took it halfway. That was the last thing I remember. Because I was not totally unconscious. I felt someone was having something with me, and I was trying to push, but I'm weak. In the morning, I was not like, did they make advance at me, or did anything happen? I called him, he denied it. He was telling me maybe I'm not thinking it, that nothing happened. He said nothing happened. A month later, I found that I was pregnant. I told him that, see, I'm pregnant too. He said, you can't do what your mates are doing. I was like, what am I mate doing? I don't know. Get rid of the child. I'm not responsible.
In an attempt to get rid of the unwanted pregnancy, only to be left with a botched or incomplete abortion. The results, this baby with multiple holes in the heart and several severe physical deformities, leading to the inability to walk, talk, and breathe properly.
The day I gave birth to this child, they called in and he admitted that he did it, but they should apologize to me.
Folakemi blames herself for her predicament.
Well, at a point, I felt the abortion was partially responsible.
After chatting with Folakemi, we tracked down Midday.
You know Miss Folakemi?
Yeah, I know. We are friends, and actually as colleague, and she's a female, I'm a male. And as a normal business partner, I don't know her motive based on me as colleague. And my motive based on her. We are adults, we are matured, and anything might come along with each other. As a colleague, based on colleague and work with each other. So with the action of work with each other, we actually work, deliver work to each other. Like she did my service in graphics line, I deliver it to her. I also do her service in cake she produce also, I deliver it to her. There are cases where maybe she has surprise to deliver. We walk around the team and get more team to join us. So I just believe we work together.
That's all you know about her? Is that all? You never had a relationship with her?
I never had.
You never had a relationship?
What I just had with her is friend. And as friend is anything can come up around each other.
Anything like what? Did you sleep with her?
Sir, I said that as friend, anything can come up.
Oh, so that means you slept with her?
Yes. My last word I dropped with her is, if I have done this, like if you are saying I am truly responsible for this, I am sorry. I am sorry.
On Tuesday morning, 26th of November, only 4 days after our last visit to Folakemi's apartment, at exactly 10 minutes past 7 o'clock, we received a call from a frantic Folakemi, her voice buried under her cries. In between prayers and wailing, Folakemi managed to say that the baby was not responding and doctors were battling to resuscitate her. 18 minutes later, another call from Folakemi will reveal the confirmation of the death of baby Grace, Folakemi's baby. Cause of death, heart failure. Time of death, 7:15 a.m. Age, 2 years, 7 months. In a collaborative effort with News Central TV and Olumide Omosibi of the Genesis Help Initiative, Midday was eventually arrested on 27th of November 2024 by police detectives from the Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Unit of the Lagos State Criminal Investigation Department, BANTI. For Folakemi, one can rightly say her rape case leaves her with not just a scar, but the bitter experience of having to lose a baby after several traumatic years of battling a severe medical condition. With Midday now arrested, she hopes to find some justice for her rape and the death of her baby. Marshal Anthony Onoye for News Central.
A sad but necessary story that needs to be told, and we hope that you can catch up with the story. Our heart really goes out to Folakemi, and we hope that she can find some measure of peace. What really is justice in this case for someone who's been taken advantage of? Not only was she raped, but she's now lost a child.
Absolutely. And I think for men in the society, I think we can do better. We need to ensure that we try as much as possible to raise men who would grow up to be responsible. In that video, you did hear where, the alleged rapist actually said if we're in a relationship, anything can happen. Anything by what means? That you could actually rape someone while you're in a relationship with a person and it's fine. Anyway, tune in at 8:30 p.m. today. Don't miss it for anything. Make sure you watch this very special report I'm sure you would get to learn a lot, and you would follow the update on this story. Great job done by our very own investigative journalist, Marshall Anthony Onoye. Well, let's move on now. The United Nations Population Fund, health experts and other key development partners have urged Nigeria's government and citizens to embrace family planning. This was at the recently concluded Family Planning Conference in Abuja, where they say that the gains are tremendous and its benefits can immensely improve the health and well-being of citizens, combat Nigeria's population bulge, and bring an end to the nation's worrisome maternal mortality rate. Amadine Uyi has more in this report.
The conference had in attendance population and health experts, all focused on improving access to family planning services in Nigeria, with several panel discussions spanning the entire duration of the conference, focusing on informing and educating those in attendance. The conference was indeed an opportunity to x-ray key objectives expected to be achieved by 2030. Experts present say it is an opportunity to bring all stakeholders working in the area of family planning together to reflect on the progress achieved so far, challenges being witnessed, and evolve strategies to improve access to family planning in Nigeria.
The major issue why we are here is to see how we can position Nigeria to achieve the FP 2030 goal which is set for themselves, which is to achieve 27% of modern contraceptive prevalence rate by 2030.
It's heartwarming to see so much commitment. And if you look at the theme for today's program, for today's conference, we're talking of sustaining commitments for family planning. Family planning is key to a lot of things. And if we can't get family planning right, then we're in big trouble. So this conference is a big, big yes.
Today's program is really about bringing all the stakeholders that are working in the area of family planning together to reflect on the progress that we have made so far, the challenges that we are still facing, and agree on the way forward, the strategies that we need to use to be able to move the needle when we come to family planning in Nigeria.
With the support from key players like the United Nations Population Fund and several development partners, experts present say current data on maternal mortality in Nigeria is worrisome, as the lack of access to family planning continues to plague the nation.
Before now, the maternal mortality is 517 per 100,000 live births, which means it increased marginally from 412 that it was a few years ago. Remember, it crashed from about 1,000 to 417 based on the midwifery service scheme, which I was part of conceptualizing. But somehow it's going up again.
We still have too many women and girls in this country, more than 21%, who would like to have access to family planning commodities, but do not have that access yet. Not even talking about the youth, the adolescents, who needs to have the proper information so that they don't make mistakes. Then they make informed decisions about their future.
They say that the importance of family planning and child spacing cannot be overemphasized, as their benefits transcend many sectors of the society.
We cannot overestimate the importance of family planning in the life of women, because family planning is what gives you the opportunity to be able to plan your family, to space your children, to have children when you want them, when you need them, when you can care of them, when you can care for them.
When you plan your family, the woman's health is enhanced. When you plan your family, your economic life is ensured. When you plan your family, there's the likelihood and scientifically proven that you can live longer and live good. Family planning is an essential. Family planning is a way to go. Even in today's terms, if you want to give quality education to your children, you must plan your family. If you want the mother to live long and healthy, you must think family planning. All these together will ensure that we build only healthy Nigerians, that we build a better Nigeria for us.
Ignoring family planning will lead to
more millions of deaths and will increase poverty across the nation. So it's actually very debilitating if we ignore family planning in Nigeria, specifically because Nigeria alone is number 3 across the globe for maternal mortality. So imagine if we continue to ignore FP, that means more women and girls die. That means we're losing 50% essentially of our economic contributions, people to contribute to economic advancement in Nigeria.
Participants at the conference are unanimous in calling on government and citizens to embrace family planning, saying its benefits can immensely transform the health and well-being of citizens. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Good report there by Amadine Uyi, and a lot of lessons to learn. Well, on that note, we want to say thank you so much. It's been a fantastic Tuesday. I am Joe Hansen.
I'm Olive Emodi, and we'll see you tomorrow.